Welcome back to the Silent Hill Commentary. And now we come to my least favorite part of the foggy town.
It's foggy and it's night.
Yeah.
It gets dark in certain points of the game, and your field of view becomes even more ridiculously limited.
What a horrible night to have a curse.
Now, the darkness is really nice in the dungeon areas. I enjoy it there. Out in the foggy town, it just gets a bit ridiculous. And then, when you have to deal with darkness in the otherworld version of the town, it can get really...
You might as well have a paper bag over your head.
Yeah, basically.
Taken out the trash at night.
In any case, the flashlight is an iconic part of Silent Hill, and I'm so glad Remake 2 is ripping it off. I mean...
Resident Evil 4 had a flashlight.
Well, it's interesting because this is like one of the first games to really have enemies react to light as a concept.
Yeah, you can turn off the flashlight to stealth around if you want. It's just you can barely see anything when it's dark in this game. You have better darkness visibility in 2 and 3, I think, but
Yeah, so turning off the flashlight to sneak around enemies is actually a thing in those games.
yeah.
Well, the idea is that you bring so much attention to yourself with the light on.
Yeah.
Which was pretty new at the time.
Yeah, it's not really feasible to do anything else in this game, so you're gonna basically just keep your light on the whole time.
I guess if you know where you're going, and if you got a minimalist playstyle, I guess nothing's stopping you from just bum rushing to the next objective.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I went temporarily insane and was trying to get all of the items in the game at this point, so...
It's your own personal Silent Hill, Lewis. Lewis's own personal Silent Hill is having a shitload of things to collect, and you can't get them all.
Yeah, but how do you make a demon out of that last item you can't find?
A giant walking demon lock.
Also, considering this is a horror game, I was taking a very offensive approach to dealing with enemies in this one. Mostly because right before recording this, I had just finished playing as Heather Mason, Shadow Warrior, in Silent Hill 3, killing everything with my giant maul and katana. So, my kill count by the end of that game, and it does show you on the results screen, my kill count was ridiculous in that game.
Is that Harry Shadow Warrior Mason?
Where did I get that nickname from?
I gave it to myself.
This is me trying to actually use the darkness to sneak up on a dog.
I can't see shit.
It didn't work. I mean, I did get pretty close before it noticed me, but... Oh. God damn it.
There you go.
There's so many first tries in this game.
So one thing I don't miss about the 5th generation is how every game ran at like 5 frames per second, pretty much.
Well, it was a little better in PlayStation, especially early on than it was on the N64, but yeah.
Which I find interesting because the PlayStation's biggest plus was storage size, and I thought that the N64 had more horsepower, so theoretically it should run games smoother. Just
it's also a matter of the flash memory.
That as well.
The N64 could load everything instantly onto the flash memory, but that means it had so much going on at the time. But PlayStation was like, okay, you're in this building, say the hospital. It loads the hospital, so it could use more of that resource to run things in the hospital, so it's not trying to run other crap as well.
Oh, okay. So that's the trade-off for having no load times.
Yeah.
Well, technically there are
optimization.
load times, but just really short ones.
Optimization. And after Crash Bandicoot, developers had a pretty good idea of how to optimize the loading process itself as well.
Fill the disk with chunk data so it's all closer to the center of the disk.
Yeah. So...
Again, comparing the first games of the series, Silent Hill definitely has the benefit of being a late PS1 game.
Yeah, it does. It really does. The atmosphere in this game is unparalleled. Well, at the time, it was unparalleled. And horror games to this day are still using aspects of gaming horror atmosphere that were pioneered by this game. Resident Evil 7 takes so many goddamn things out of the Silent Hill playbook that it almost seems to have felt an obligation to reference Silent Hill at least 5 times over the course of its runtime.
A lot of people thought Resident Evil 7 in its entirety was capitalizing on Silent Hills that never came out.
Oh, well, to a certain extent, the marketing was, but I think, if I recall, the game was actually just coincidentally in development and going with a first-person direction anyway
I have
when
no
Silent
doubt.
Hills
No
came
doubt.
out, when PT came out. So it was sort of a case where the developers and the marketing team especially decided to,
Yeah, I saw that empty void, and I was like, guys, we gotta jump in now.
But it's not even just that. There are weird, odd moments in Resident Evil 7 that are obviously call-outs to the Silent Hill games. The phone that rings as you open a door when Zoe is calling you after you stealth away from the first Baker encounter, that is a direct reference to a moment in this game where you open a door in the school and a phone rings behind you and you turn around and have to pick it up.
I still say or Silent Hills will probably be the biggest missed opportunity in gaming.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. And you know what? I'm a lot more interested in that idea now after watching a theory video that points out some really compelling evidence for it to have been connected to, what is it called? MK Ultra brainwashing. That old thing.
Oh, I thought it was like a Mortal Kombat.
No, it was a
spin-off.
sort of CIA controversy involving brainwashing, which is actually not unfitting for this series, since a major inspiration for Silent Hill was the movie Jacob's Ladder. In fact, James Sunderland's jacket is basically ripped right out of that movie, if I remember correctly. As is the flaming staircase in Silent Hill 2. Or something like that.
I think it's just
happens
an
in that
hour and a
movie.
half of a guy named Jacob going to Home Depot looking for the right ladder. Not exactly how I remembered it, but
I need to sit down and watch that movie from front to back because I haven't had a chance to do that. I own it on Vudu, but I haven't sat down to watch it yet. It's one of those cult classic kind of things.
So, I was looking at the map, and the actual town seems to only be about, 3 or 4 square blocks, right?
As far as the world goes, this demon...
This game, I know.
Yeah.
So is it the same layout in every game, or is it just a different part of the town?
Okay,
Or does it just change because it's spooky and nobody cares?
I'm not sure about Downpour or Homecoming. However, there are 2 distinct parts of town, this one to the north of the lake and the other to the south of the lake, that you see in the first 3 games. This game is, as far as I know, the only one that explores this particular part of Silent Hill.
Okay, so they just come up with different parts of the town.
The southern half of Silent Hill on the south end of the lake is the one you explore in 2 and 3.
Okay.
Functionally, though, it's a creature of chaos that may take many incarnations.
Well, the town itself is still set layout. Is the thing. The town is the town. And it's implied, although we never really see this, it's implied that there are still people running around the town, doing their day-to-day thing, that it's still a functioning resort town that people take vacations to.
As far as the outside world is convinced.
So the town's laid out the same in Silent Hill 2 as it is in 3? Then?
It's literally the same sections of town that you're running through.
Oh wow! Okay, that's interesting.
You only go through the foggy town for a very short sequence toward the end of the game, so they pretty much reused that segment of the town from 2.
Oh, huh.
Except you don't have anything to find, so you might as well just run from point A to point B and ignore everything. It's kind of a nothing segment in that game.
Well, still, I do like the consistency. Again, maybe playing through the same exact area isn't super interesting gameplay-wise, but it does make it feel like, okay, this is a real place and not Oh, again, just, Castlevania is different every game because it needs to be,
Yeah. Well, the Silent Hill setting is pretty well developed, actually. It's kind of it's kind of a massive reference to The Shining, specifically the movie The Shining, because this wasn't part of the book. The backstory that the hotel has about being built on an Indian burial ground in the movie. It doesn't have a
Because
backstory
of course
in the
it
book.
doesn't.
It doesn't have a backstory in the book, but yeah, that's sort of a throwaway line from the movie. Well, this place has a sort of similar thing going on. It's connected to a cult that has roots in the natives who were here when the place was originally settled, and a lot of that stuff plays into the supernatural weirdness of Silent Hill.
I want to ask, how do you guys feel about them playing up the mystery and then later revealing that it's involved in some sort of like mysticism or cult or like voodoo, ancient burial grounds? Do you feel like it saps away the menace?
It's kind of a Lovecraftian sort of thing, which take it or leave it. That's a personal preference as to whether or not you like that kind of storytelling direction.
As long as it's vague enough, I don't mind, because you do need some kind of explanation rather than the town is really weird and there's demons and shit. Who knows why it's here?
The Silent Hill movie, on the other hand,
the movie does a lot more of the cult stuff.
The movie really, really jumped the shark on explaining what the hell was up with Silent Hill. It really wanted you to know what was going on. It wanted there to be zero mystery whatsoever. So it actually took the whole Alessa story in a completely different direction. And
I don't mind the idea of there being like an explanation for there's some really fucked up cult shit going on. That's a good enough explanation. You don't need to go too much more into that, because it leaves enough room that you can play with it without having to these are the rules of the cult. This is what they're doing. Blah 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 blah.
I think it might have been maybe a little bit more effective if we didn't know what they were worshiping or what the true nature of what the cult was. The
nature of what the cult worships is left pretty much up in the air. So we're not really sure exactly what the deity they're worshipping is, whether or not it's actually a deity or some kind of demon or whatever. That is never really 100% explained,
And I don't think it should be, ever.
This house belongs to one of the teachers at the school, which is why it has a name attached to it. So you actually do find the key in the first dungeon, quote unquote. What was I gonna say? I had a thought in my head and I lost it again.
Well, just back to the whole explanation thing a little bit. That's also a big difference between American and Western horror than Japanese Eastern horror. Because if you watch a lot of the original Ringu or a bunch of their other horror movies, they really don't.
That's what the Ring was based on.
That was the
Yeah.
other. Oh, I found my thought again. It has to do with the explanations. The thing that really underlines the difference between the Silent Hill games and the Silent Hill movie was the siren. You remember the siren that you hear out of nowhere in the alley at the beginning? They show the siren itself when it sounds in the movie. They show you where the siren is coming from. It's a siren on the church. They don't show you where the siren is coming from in the game. You have no idea. It's a question that's never answered. It's just a random ass sound that alerts you to the coming of monsters. And it's actually a movie reference. I think it's a reference to a Stephen King movie at some point that involved pterodactyls bursting through windows. If that sounds familiar to any of you.
But to go back to what we were saying, Ryan, the Eastern Western horror
Eastern
movie.
horror really doesn't bother trying to explain what's going on with the creepy monsters or whatever it is. The fear is not understanding and not knowing what they're doing. They're just there and you have to deal with them.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Western horror really likes to try and figure out why is the demon Pazuzu possessing someone or whatever.
Well, yeah.
Well, to an extent, I think it depends on. It's a case by case.
Well, I mean, obviously there's varying degrees of it, but that's
Because,
in more broad strokes. That's what it is.
In a broad strokes, I agree, because in some cases, a movie starts really well until it gets enough sequels where it's okay, I think we need to start explaining why this is like this, and to the franchise's detriment, because that ruined Halloween.
Yeah.
Because the big thing about Halloween, the first one is, well, first of all, how little bloodshed there was in that movie entirely, and how despite the fact that Michael Myers is still a very dominating, unflinching sentinel.
He's just a guy.
And then by the sixth movie, no, he's a product of a cult.
Yep.
And,
it's always, you see, that's the thing. It's always a cult. And I don't know, come up with something more interesting. Like, that's the only thing about, like, I know we're talking generally. I don't have a problem with, okay, the explanation is such and such, and we don't need to know much more about it. It's just, I have a thing against cults. They're both. Don't join a cult, kids.
The thing about the cult in Silent Hill, though, is it's not the explanation. It's a symptom of the problem. Silent Hill was screwed up before the cults or Alessa even happened. Alessa kind of amped it up, but it was always a supernatural place with weird stuff going on, which is why the cult rose up in the first place. The story here, though, is that the cult originally lived in this kind of secluded town called Silent Hill, but then development happened. The tourist market happened, and it became a resort town. And there's this subplot where there's a faction within the town that dislikes this development, which you can sort of infer was the cult, So it's not like super in-depth explained. It's just this kind of background side plot that you can pick up as you learn more about the town.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie. You stomp on that thing and it's like a squeaky toy.
Kind of does.
Now in stores today, get your kid a demon dog plushie, only $29.99.
I'm pretty sure there's Silent Hill merchandise for the little ones. In fact, let me do a quick.
Well, that scary, bloody toy from Silent Hill 3 might be a toy somewhere.
Dude, I'm still laughing at the fact that Pyramid Head is a Bomberman character. If you do not know the original context of that character in the first place,
not just Bomberman, the nurse with their big boobs intact. It's like,
but fucking Pyramid Head literally rapes a demon.
It is, the first time you see him, he's raping a demon.
Yeah,
well,
it's like
sort of gyrating his hips oddly at it. It's kind of ambiguous, but that's kind of what people get from him. He's basically a big phallic symbol. Most of that game, most of that game.
No wonder they keep shoving him and everything.
Most of the monsters in Silent Hill 2 take feminine shape because, well, that's got to do with James Sunderland.
It's a reflection of James. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can interpret James Sunderland's nightmares in Silent Hill in about 50 different ways, which is the cool part about that game's symbolism.
Freud would have a field day with it, yes.
Yeah, it's there's a lot to dissect and a lot of different directions you can take it.
So what's the bunny from? The pink bunny.
The pink bunny is in the third game. In the third game, it's just part of a setting. In the third game, it's a background object that's mildly creepy in the third game, and it's one of the first
plushies of that.
It's one of the first things you see in the game because there's a flash forward dream to the theme park area at the beginning that Heather wakes up from when she gets hit by a train.
I see.
But in the movie,
there's plushies of that bunny.
In the movie, they had it come alive, which kind of spoiled it because it was better as an inanimate object. Nobody likes the second Silent Hill movie, by the way. It's fucking terrible. Jon Snow couldn't save it either.
That actor was in that movie? Wow.
Yeah, he does a really horrible American accent, by the way, apparently.
Why do you keep on kicking the dog after it's dead?
Because it shuts off the static when it's actually dead, as opposed to just on the ground twitching and still alive.
Also, you always double tap.
Okay.
If you leave the dog on the ground, it won't bother you. You can leave, but it also won't turn off the static on the radio, which means you won't necessarily know whether or not there are other enemies around. So I always kick the dog to shut off the radio, and if I kick the dog and the static is still going, that means there's another enemy lurking off screen.
Okay. All right,
The
that makes
radio
sense.
really is an ingenious thing. Like if you're going to have this kind of wide environment with with a camera that swivels around all dizzy like and you can't necessarily see all the enemies, then having the radio to alert you to the fact that there are enemies around some place is pretty helpful. You can turn the radio off in the menu, and I think that enemies might react to the sound. I'm not sure, but it is a thing.
Regardless, we are now at the school. Time to find Arnie.
So there's a map on a bench like 2 feet to my right in that 2 feet to my left rather in that room, and I was looking for it. I'm like, oh, I guess the map isn't in here. No, I just missed it. Oops.
Arnie, where are you?
Anyway, the school from Kindergarten Cop, the first dungeon of the game, and honestly, these segments of the game are by far the most fun. Because this is the point where the strengths of your standard survival horror meet the strengths of Silent Hill. And this is part of the reason that I like Silent Hill 3 so much, is that it's pretty much nothing but this. I mean, the times that there are segues in between them are good segues. Like you get a nostalgic walk down one of the streets from Silent Hill 2, which is a moment to remember, and it also cements the connection between the games and all of that. And then there's like a visit to Heather's apartment in the mid game, which is no combat, no scary stuff, just some interesting story, and then a kick-ass boss fight.
Why is everything written in blood here? Did they just do the Sideshow Bob and prick their finger and write on it?
Yeah, dude. Henry, use a pen, dude.
Well, the thing about the whole Nightmare Town thing is that there doesn't really need to be an explanation for whatever you see. You might think there is, but most of it is
I sure hope
just...
that's not Chris's blood.
But most of it is just imagery that the town conjures up.
You see, I can't take Writing in Blood seriously anymore, and this is because Ace Attorney, and that series has, I think, like 6 different cases where somebody's name is written in blood. And, oh, wouldn't you know, every single time it was actually fake, and the killer did that to lead someone on the wrong trail.
A red herring.
So you think that lost Yokio city, or wherever the hell Ace Attorney takes place in
America.
Japan, Ford, yeah. That they just say, okay, if this person's name is written in blood, they're absolutely not the killer. You think that they'd learn that by this point, but no.
And then the next game subverts that and actually has to be the killer.
Yeah, no, that's how I thought you for a loop.
It's never lupus.
Except for the one episode where it was. Like that one episode of Pup Named Scooby-Doo where it actually was red herring for once.
There's an episode of, I think it's Mystery Incorporated, where that happens as well, where Velma's like, oh, guys, I think this is him. And then Fred's like, no, it can't be him because that guy is way too obvious. It has to be someone else. And it turns out it actually was that guy.
The really obvious guy.
Yeah. Oh, man, but I haven't watched A Pup Named Scooby-Doo in forever. I don't remember if that holds up at all.
It, like a lot of shows at the time, it really kind of doesn't.
Okay,
Oh.
so I get why there's a first aid kit in the nurse's office. Why was there a health drink in here?
healthy.
Dealing with those kids is stressful, and sometimes you just need a little pick-me-up,
Why was the first aid kit on the table and the health drink in the shelf where the first aid kit should have been?
Because kids can't drink health drinks. They're not old enough yet.
They're not old enough. They don't have legal state ID for it.
What they don't tell you is that if you take off the label for the health drink, it says Vitamina Vegemin. 30% alcohol.
Vitamin Vegemin. That's an I Love Lucy thing, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh, Jesus.
That's old for our parents. Oh,
That's
geez.
That's like my mom's favorite episode, though, so I know that one.
Oh, it's like
It's that one and the conveyor belt one.
The chocolates, yeah.
Yeah, the 2 most famous
I would
ones of the show.
never expect this channel to reference I Love Lucy. in any
Honestly, what's probably sad is that most people watching this probably don't recognize the conveyor belt from I Love Lucy, but they recognize it from the Drake and Josh episode that references the I Love Lucy episode with the conveyor belt. So, yeah.
Also, save points. I should have commented this on this at the first save point, but Harry Mason actually explains what he's doing with the notes. He's leaving notes behind so that if anyone else experiences the future event, if these same events in the future, maybe they'll find his notes handy. This comes back in Silent Hill 3 as you find some of Harry's notes during the endgame. It's pretty cool.
Callbacks.